Hey guys, I'm back in the studio and very excited about today's lesson. It's all about galaxy painting. So, grab some watercolors and some paper and let's get painting. Okay, so we're going to start simply by tracing some circles for some planets, and I just used whatever I could find around the house. So teacup, a little container, even a quarter, any of those will work. And so I just traced them very lightly with a pencil, and we're going to do the planets first. Now this is very free form, so I want you to experiment with different materials. You can pour salt in them. You can try using alcohol, like rubbing alcohol, and other household materials as well to just, see what you come up with. See what happens when the chemicals react. So what I'm doing now is I'm starting with one and I'm just wetting it with my paintbrush, just with water. And I'm going to start by sticking with one color. And so the water is going to help it spread and give us kind of this planetary effect. And I'm going to go in with maybe some red here. Now I'm not painting like back and forth like brush strokes. I'm just merely touching the paper with my wet paint, and what happens is because the paper is wet, it will pull the paint from my brush, and I'm just going to kind of lead this around a little bit, and then I'm just going to let it be. So that one's good. So you kind of want to be careful about the colors you choose to. You can see where my purple and my yellow met. They're kind of making this weird little brown color. But that's okay. We're just going to leave it. This is part of the experimentation process. Now I'm going to choose slightly different colors for this. This is going to be more of an Earth-like planet. And as well, you can choose different shades of the same color. That will look nice. I've got some different greens going on in here. And I'm going to go in with my blue. So the more water you have, the thinner your color is going to look. So if you want something really, really dark, you're going to have to swirl your brush into the paint more times. The more times you do it, the darker the paint will be. Okay, I'm just going to leave that be. And alternatively, you should be trying things without wetting the paper. So for example, I'm going to just do it dry here. And maybe I want to do a little darker on the edges. And rinsing my brush off. And I'm going to let it come to purple. Now it's okay if I have to slightly go off of the edges because I will be doing my galaxy in the background. So if I need to clean it up later, that's okay. So what I did was I just put a little bit of a clean brush. I just put little drops of water in there just to give it a little bit of texture. And when that dries, that'll give it a nice little cratery effect. Time to really, practice different types of colors. Practice blending different colors together. Alternately, I can paint, I'm going to paint this whole shape one color, and then I'm going to do drops of a darker color and see what happens. And what if we did some yellow in here? No, I don't want to like disturb it too much. I'm just gonna drop the paint in here. I'm just kind of dabbing it on. I'm just gonna let it be. And let it do its own thing. It'll be a nice little surprise when it's all done. For this little guy, I think I'm gonna do some pink. And with a couple drops of purple in there. And then for this big one, I kind of want to make it look very Jupiter-like. So I am going to wet this again. I'm actually going to do this really with a lot of water. So I really want it to spread and look like Jupiter. Okay, so I'm going to be using some oranges and reds, maybe a little bit of brown. Don't be afraid of using brown if you are lucky enough to have the paint, because it's a good way to make a color a little bit darker without having to add black to it. Sometimes black just really is very, very strong, and so it will kind of overtake your entire color. But if you use brown instead, it can kind of give you a little more control over how dark you go. And let's go in with some of this interesting orange yellow color. A lot of you are probably using pan watercolors, and that's totally fine. Anything that you have is fine. My colors are super vibrant right now, so if you're looking and you're like, hey, my colors don't look like hers, I'm using tube watercolors. So they come in a tube like this, and you add water to them. They are liquid, but you do add water to them, and they are just super vibrant. And honestly, even though those are really good, pretty good quality for the most part, but that's all I could find at the store when I went. So I'm going to add a little bit of this burnt sienna as well, just to give it some of that planetary dimension that I want. Jupiter kind of look. Jupiter's got like browns and stuff in it. And we can even make the spot. Okay, so now we're just going to let those dry, and we are going to pick a focal point for our nebula. And there's tons of pictures. I highly recommend looking at a telescope, and that can give you like a really good idea of what colors to use if you're not sure which colors to use, but really you could do what you want. That's what's fun about this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're doing this in layers, and so I am just going to choose an area, and I'm going to kind of make it this section here, and I'm going to paint it with water, quite a lot of water, because I really want it to kind of blend together. And I'm going to add some of this green. And some of this kind of pinkish. Don't worry if it looks super light right now. We're going to build up layers. Okay, now let that kind of, and I can always decide later if I don't like it, I can cover it up. It's not really a big deal. That's what's nice about watercolors, or especially if you're working light to dark. Now, normally if you had my class, we would definitely be working light to dark. But if you don't do that, that's okay too. It's just a little easier. And I think I'm going to have a little kind of area over here. I'm going to let this dry as well. And it's dry. Okay, so now that I've let this dry, I have scraped off some of the salt over here, and you can see it made a really cool texture there, same as this one. So now we're going to start layering our galaxy, and you're going to definitely want some black with this. Use a lot of blues and purples with some black in there. You want it to be have a very stark difference than your background. So I'm sorry, you want it to have a very stark difference from your planets. So I'm going to be using a couple different dark blues, some dark purples, and it's all a layering process. So if it doesn't look right the first time you do it, you can wait, and when it dries, you can add more. There's no rules. And what's nice about watercolors, there's a lot of layering going on, and if you don't like something, you can, you know, cover it up. Okay, sorry about the pause. I'm just trying to make sure I have all my paints together. Okay, so for some reason my camera shut off when I was doing the really important part of the galaxy painting. So I'm just gonna kind of refilm this. I don't have the original, my original looks like this, but the technique I'm gonna show you is the same. So really what you wanna do is you want to layer the colors, and you wanna let them blend together. So all I'm doing is I'm wetting my paper with water. And then I'm going to be touching the colors, and then I'm just kind of dabbing on the paper. And what happens is the water that's on the paper will start to spread the paint around. Now you're going to want to use blacks and purples and pinks. You could use some greens if you wanted. Unfortunately, all of my colors were used up. So I'm just dabbing on in certain areas. I'm not going all over. I'm not like painting back and forth like this, like we normally do. I'm just kind of blobbing on the paper next to another color. And so then they'll kind of like hang out and marry and merge. Now you may have to go back and do another layer when this dries, because it does kind of lighten up. So you can see it's starting to come together a little bit. Now this down here was just kind of an old painting that I started, so I didn't want to waste paper, you know how I am about wasting paper. So and then you just keep going it over and over, spreading your painting out furthermore. And if you have to do this in 2 goes, like let's say you did this and it's not doing what you want, you let it dry, and then you can go back over it with some more color, and then it will give you an even more layered effect, which is what we want. The way that we create distance with watercolor is with layers of color, and that only works when you let them dry in between layers. So you can see it's pretty light over here. So if I go over that with another layer when it's dry, it's really gonna darken up really nice. Okay, so what I've been doing here is layering in my blues and blacks and my purples. And right now it looks super dark, but it'll lighten up as it dries. And it's really important that right now, at this point, we have to leave it alone and let it dry. It's very tempting to want to keep moving, but something about watercolors, you have to be very patient with it. And then these interesting puddles over here, I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle a little bit of salt in there, just because I did want this to be a focal point anyway. Okay, maybe a little bit over here, a little bit over there. I'm not going to go crazy with it. It kind of takes away if you do it too much. If you did it everywhere, it wouldn't look as good. I mean, you could certainly do that. I'm just saying, like, sometimes if you use it sparingly, then it makes it look like a really important spot. Okay, well, I will see you guys when this is all dry. Okay, so now that it's dry, what I've done is I've cut some circles out of paper because I didn't really plan ahead here, and I don't want the stars to be on my planets. And all I'm doing now is I'm taking a little bit of white paint that I mixed with a tiny little bit of water. Now, if you have an old toothbrush, this actually works the best for that. But I didn't have one hanging around, and chances are you might not either. So I'm just taking a brush, and I watered down a little bit of white acrylic paint. And so now I'm going to kind of like flick it. Now, the more paint you have on your brush, you're going to get some like larger blobs, some larger stars, and that's fine. Okay. So from here, I'm going to remove this. Really, I'm just going to do that. There we go. Okay. So I could, if I wanted to, I could go back and take a really tiny skinny brush if you are lucky enough to have one, and I could even connect stars if I wanted like a constellation or something like that. Obviously I have to do it while it's still wet. I don't know what constellation this is. I'm just making it up. Now that I think about it, it's probably something you want to do when this is dry, so you can put your hand on it to study. You could do your own birth sign if you wanted. That would be cool. Don't forget to dot in the stars that you're connecting to, though. And I could come in and add some shooting stars if I wanted. Now, if I'm going to do that, or a comet or something like that, I'm going to want to do this very technically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push and pull quick. That didn't quite do what I wanted. The idea was for it to have a little bit of wider at the beginning and have it get skinnier as it goes back. I think I added a little too much white to my acrylic paint, so it's really light right now. So, whatever you come up with, now you don't have to do the planets necessarily. If you want to do something else, what I was going to do with my students this year was, and I've done this before, make a galaxy, just the galaxy, no planets or anything like that. And then take a picture of them in their profile and have them cut it out, and then you can cut out the profile out of the galaxy, and it looks really cool. That's a project that I did a couple years ago, and it turned out wonderful. So I can go through and add a little bit of more exploding stars if I wanted. All right. Wow. I hope you enjoyed this, and just know that this is all about experimentation. So I don't expect anybody's to look like mine. I expect it to look like yours. So I hope you had fun.